Success Insight shares the stories of the people with passion and drive who make things happen in the world. Here's your host, Howard Fox.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Success Insight podcast. Our guest today is Andrée Martin. And you know, when Andrée Martin is on our show, it must be Mindset Monday. And we are excited about another great show of insights and really some very valuable discussions around the confluence of golfing, mindset, and business. Now, let's give you a little background about Andrée. She is your leadership, mindset, and golf performance coach. She's an LPGA Class A Life member, a nationally recognized top 50 golf teacher and expert, and a member of the Maine Golf Hall of Fame. Recognizing golf's value as a business tool in today's competitive marketplace, Andrée works with individuals, groups, corporate, or organizational clients to create educational and team-building programs that enhance the professional success of aspiring executives. Andrée, welcome back to the Success Insight podcast.
Thank you, Howard. Great to be back with you, as always.
Fantastic, and hard to believe we are in June already.
Oh, each week just seems to whiz on by. It's crazy, crazy, crazy.
Most definitely. So what's in store for us today on Mindset Monday?
Today's episode is the 4 mindsets of great coaches.
4 mindsets of great coaches. So I'm not even going to begin to gather a guess of what this might be, but I know there's a lot of books out there with the 4 questions, the 4 of this, the 4 of that. So what are those 4 mindsets?
The 4 mindsets are humility, potential, risk, and responsibility.
Humility, potential, risk, and responsibility.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about it.
So your humility mindset. With great coaches, it's not about how much do I know, how smart am I, do this exactly the way I would do it. A great coach wants to think about what does this employee or athlete need to create and increase their capabilities and contributions to the team and to the success of their business and sport. They're always thinking about that instead. And that comes from that inspiration, and they're pretty much setting themselves aside, and they're listening and caring and building trust by inspiring that employee or athlete to drive towards their best. It just drives their engagement and their business performance.
I'm going to push back just ever so slightly.
Okay.
Patrick Lencioni wrote a book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and then we use that model within the DISC work that I do, and we call it the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. But he wrote a book called The Ideal Team Player, and in the ideal team player, there were 3 characteristics: humble, hungry, and smart. And so humility aligns with humble. And while I agree with what you've just said about the great leader goes out of his or her way to really bring out the best in the people they're responsible for, but having humility or being humble, it also is a behavior on the part of the leader, him or herself,
Absolutely.
or the golfer, him or herself. Because, I mean, who's the top golfer in the world right now?
You've got Bryson DeChambeau.
Okay.
Right.
I'm not even going to begin to try to repeat that name. However, how does Bryson talk about himself as one of the premier golfers in the world today? Does he talk about, oh, how great I am?
No.
Or look at what I did, it's all about me? Or is he also saying, I had a great round. I had, the greens were perfect. The course officials took care of the crowds and really made this experience a positive one and allowed me to really focus on what I do best.
Yes and no, because you get both. Bryson's a unique one. I don't even know that I would use him as an example right now.
He might have not been the best example.
But it's okay because there's all different kinds. And this is a great example of all different kinds. He's at the top of his game. He he is a rock when it comes to stretching himself and being an amazingly fit athlete who can absolutely crush it out of the park. And because he's crushing those numbers, he's actually ahead of the field by, 1.5 to 2 strokes and achieves his success that way. And yes, I know we're in June, but I'm going back to dates in March where he proved it over and over again. But let's go back to the humility piece, because it does take a humble athlete who isn't so focused on the ego to come back to focusing on what it takes to win and having that potential mindset and that risk mindset that I'm going to get to in a moment. But we're talking right now about great coaches, not great athletes. What are the great coaches doing to inspire those great athletes to their brilliance? And they're not coming from an ego standpoint.
Right.
Where they're coming from is looking at where can this athlete or employee increase their contribution and impact on the position they have in either the job or the field to play their very best. And it takes knowing how to get them into full alignment. And that's what a coach does. I'm now NLP master certified, and I can get corporate teams as well as athlete in full alignment. Their values are all lined up in the top 5 so that everybody works as a cohesive unit in teams. When it comes to that individual athlete, it's about getting rid of all their negative beliefs, negative emotions, limiting decisions, all the patterns that are holding them back, and inspiring them into their brilliance to perform with the humility. And yes, it takes us into the number 2, which is potential mindset. Okay. Everybody is capable, and it is about will versus skill, some would say. I would say and skill. A great leader is going to put a round peg into a round hole. And this is where you and the disc come forward, right? They're going to put a square peg in a square hole. I think about Brady and the Patriots and how he's done it over the years. Well, you don't get picked in the 6th part of the draft out of your skill. It's more, he proved it with his will. He didn't say, oh, poor me. He moved forward with out of, and pulled it out of his potential through the great coaching of Belichick. And Carol Dweck in Psychology Today often spoke of hard work, focused practice, persistence, results, and continuous learning and growth. In addition to the innate talent, that potential mindset is what succeeds. And it's proven over and over and over again. You can tell I'm from New England because I'm now going to talk about Larry Bird.
Okay.
But stretch assignments with an athlete. You got to get that stretch assignment to develop the skill in addition to these progress checks to keep them amped up and moving forward.
Same thing in the business world. You can't just sit there and do your job. And even if you do it very well and expect, well, somebody's going to recognize me and give me a promotion or a raise as a result,
right?
You have to be willing to stand up and say, I'm interested in doing this kind of work. Where are there opportunities for me to assist someone so I can learn and build up that track record? So those stretch assignments, that's the mark of being successful in a large corporation.
Absolutely. It's about success beyond the innate talent and pushing towards that.
Right.
And that takes you to the risk mindset because you got to take risks to succeed. You learn as much from your failures as you do your successes. And unless you take that risk, you're never going to know how much better you could really be, how much better you can strive toward, and how to keep amping up those benchmarks and striving toward that better goal. Trial and error, yeah, you got to go for it. You learn riding a bike. You got to fall several times until you get, or start with those training wheels, take them off one by one, and then you're riding on 2 wheels.
Well, in business, if you make a mistake and you're in an organization that recognizes mistakes can occur. Now, we're not talking about life and death mistakes or, for with in surgery or pharmaceutical, et cetera, or jumping out of an airplane with a parachute, but within reason of the work you do.
Well, with safety in mind.
With safety in mind, making a mistake is an opportunity to learn.
Exactly.
And that's an important part of an organization's culture is you don't get cut off at the knees because you made a mistake.
Exactly. And good coaching supports this risk reward opportunity. And they know when to push the boundaries and calibrate the attention and support that the employee or athlete needs.
Great.
So push up, get up, do it again. When you fall, celebrate, and then plan the next big win.
Excellent.
Right? And that takes us into the responsibility mindset as well. So you don't want to make excuses, you make results, right? Blame doesn't work. You've got to own up, shut up, focus, and do.
Excellent.
And it is all about the choices you make. Poor me, poor me. What are you going to get?
More poor me, poor me.
Yeah, and that's not taking responsibility.
No,
we all know that. But it's like, okay, recognize it. And how are you going to get yourself in a better place?
I'm working with individuals now who are in transition and they are actively interviewing for new opportunities. And, a good question, not only for the individual, but also for this individual to ask the organization that's doing the hiring is how are mistakes responded to? And how does the organization take responsibility for its actions, its decisions, whether it went well or didn't go well, and what are the expectations for me? Or if I receive a question, what happens when you were on a project and it didn't go well? And maybe it could have gone better, could have been something you needed to do. How did you handle that? And that's a big part of the behavioral interviewing that takes place.
Yeah. It's about pushing forward. It's like knocking the golf ball in the hazard and you're coming down the stretch. You're one shot in the lead. How do you manage yourself, pull it together to still maintain, to keep yourself winning? I think of Tiger coming back from surgery of his back, his knee, his family situation. I mean, now he's still pulling out of it. He's still going to push forward. Do we know he's going to come back to full competition? No, but it takes a lot of strength and mindset to do that.
Sure.
And it takes a lot of taking responsibility to own up to what has occurred in your life when everything seems to be going the wrong direction, to keep coming forward. And that's another thing to those folks that are in transition. And any of you listening today, when you're in transition, you've got choices. How are you going to be responsible for yourself and the opportunities that lie ahead? Or are you going to look at what isn't happening?
Right.
Everything's a choice. What are you going to do? You make success your greatest accomplishment today, or are you going to go the other way? Right?
Of course. Go for the gold. Don't settle for silver.
Always go for the gold and don't settle for silver. And then the last comment I'd like to make is great coaches coach so well that the employee and athlete doesn't even know they're being coached. This is a sign of greatness. They don't know they're being coached. They don't know they're being mentored. The employee and individual just knows they're growing, learning. And it's really about the journey anyway, isn't it, Howard?
Yeah.
And bettering along the way and keep going.
It's interesting. There's
keep going for that gold.
Of course. And there's a book, The Leadership Challenge by James Kouzes and Barry Posner. And great leaders, it's not a here, look at me, because that gets back to the humility or being humble, but they put into practice behaviors at all steps of the business continuum or professional continuum. They're modeling the way, they're inspiring people, they're challenging people, enabling people, and encouraging people. And great leaders, all of those behaviors become very natural, so that the staff member, the employee, all they can think about is how that leader made them feel.
Right.
In the end.
You're absolutely right.
Very good. Very good. Andrée, before we head out, what are the best places for our listeners to go if they would like to learn more about you and your work?
I can be reached at andreegolf.com. That's Andrée with 2 E's. You can reach me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram.
Fantastic. Well, we will most definitely provide the links to andreegolf.com as well as your YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. As always, it is a pleasure to have you join me on Success Insight Podcast and this wonderful series of Mindset Monday. Thank you again, Andrée.
Thank you, Howard. Always a pleasure.
All right, folks, we have just been chatting with Andrée Martin, our leadership mindset and golf performance coach. And today's topic was the 4 mindsets of great coaches. And we talked about humility, potential mindset, risk mindset, and responsibility mindset. Lots of great insights today, insights that translate very nicely into the world of sport and in Andrée's world, golf, but also into the world of business. So we hope you, after listening to the episode, perhaps there's an insight that you can take away and perhaps give you the foundation for some steps you want to take in whatever goals you have or goals you have for your team. Okay? So let us know what you thought of tonight's episode, and you can find us on successinsightpodcast.com. We are on Facebook and LinkedIn at Success Insight Podcast. We are also on the podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. And as we had said a few minutes ago, on Spotify, which is one of our major podcasting platforms, but also we have a playlist devoted solely to our Mindset Monday episodes with Andrée, and we will provide a backlink to the playlist as well. And we're also on the other major podcasting platforms, Pandora and iHeart Radio, and we're also on YouTube. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day, and we will see you on the next episode of the Success Insight Podcast. Take care now.
Success Insight is a production of Fox Coaching and First Story Strategies. Find us online, successinsightpodcast.com.